Okay, welcome, one and all. In the UK and most of Africa, it's Mothering Sunday. I know in the States you still have a while to go. But and for my lessons, here going to speak about Teddy Riley's "Remember the Times." Maybe I think Andrew has invited Teddy, so maybe he will join us, but we'll see. Okay, how's everyone doing this fine day?
Good. Excited to talk about this book.
Good evening,
finally.
all, as usual.
Already.
Nice to see you all.
Stevie is 10 seconds behind time. There's a lot delay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Go ahead. Andrew, what about yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm broadcasting live and direct from Marina del Rey, California.
Marine Dairy,
wedding,
okay.
yeah, the wedding planning stuff continues. The bride or my fiance is doing some, garment, attire stuff going on. So, yeah.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Well, good. The final countdown. The
Yep.
final countdown. Baseline G, welcome. We read the book. Look forward to the show. Donald Cleveland.
Donald Cleveland in the house, DC.
Donald,
Woo!
how you doing?
Yeah, Vijay, how you been?
Good. I'm excited to finally talk about this book. It's been a long time coming. We've been waiting for this book. I think Teddy's talked about it for over 20 years. So finally, he's dropped a book that he's written, an autobiography. So excited to talk about this. But in life, generally, I'm good. I have been buying some music. I was in Greenwich. I thought I might pop into you, but I think the days you weren't in that day. So I went into the music and video exchange there and got a few bits, some new jack and some soul, a little bit of hip hop. And all good.
Okay, we got Mr. BB and New Pack. Welcome, Stevie. How about you? How have you been, Stevie? Okay, seems to be okay. Stevie, can you hear us? Nope, doesn't seem like it. I think he got upset and he's left. Okay. Hey, strictly swing swing show.
Yeah,
Out in
William
Paris.
France. Nice.
William. He's definitely welcome. Bonjour. Okay, it seems to about wow. Should be an interesting chat. We've got
Rev is back.
Rev,
okay. Rev, haven't seen you in a while. How you doing?
Okay. Stevie will join us back in, but Teddy's gone on an extensive book tour, and which has been it has had its moments where he's brought up some things from his book and brought things that he didn't include in his book. Before we dive into the book, what have you guys made of his book tour and some of the sort of interviews he's had and some of the things that have come out in that?
I'll start. I've been watching a lot of the YouTube videos about the book, and then even getting some things outside of the book that kind of add color to it. So, me personally, I think that this is a good time to be a Teddy Riley fan because you're getting much more information than was available in the past. So, I think Teddy is also connecting with a lot of different corners of his fandom, whether it's like, the people who are from Harlem or who are from Jamaica, or like you talked about, all I want to do is zoom, 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 and a poom, poom. Like I learned something new, like poom, poom is like a different term than just boom, boom, but poom, poom is like not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not appropriate. So it's boom, boom, but it's really poom, poom. And I think it's a Jamaican thing. Or hey, I know it's somewhere in the islands. I forget which one it is. But anyway, long story short, I think he's doing a good job of making sure that anybody who wants to know about the book or know about his story, he's just giving interviews left and right with many different levels. So go to YouTube, type in Teddy Riley, and you'll see he's not sleeping. He's going on overtime.
Yeah. I mean, what Vijay, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's been busy, and I think we'll delve into that a little bit more in the book. But I think Teddy should really just celebrate how awesome he's been as a musician. I think there's some things where he's talked about politics and this and that have happened, and I don't think that really adds value, because if you're Teddy Riley, you don't need to explain anything to anybody. You are already a badass. You just need to let the music talk about the music, talk about the stories, talk about the good stuff. I mean, I know there's in all of our lives that, you know, there's not just good stuff. There's every good, bad, indifferent, in between things that make up our entire story. But I think right now it should just be a celebration of who Teddy is and what he's achieved. And I think there's been a lot of stuff which I don't think was necessary to draw attention to as much as was the case. That's just my take.
Stevie, hopefully you're back and kicking. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you all clearly now. I've switched to my phone because my desktop connection just wasn't doing it, really, was it? It kept falling out of connection. So I'm all good to go now.
Okay. So what are your thoughts? The question was, what are your thoughts on how Teddy has been promoting his book, Remember the Times?
I think he's been doing a very, very good job of getting people talking about him. An exceptional job, whether it be that good or bad, you know, putting the stories out about Keith Sweat, Shaughnessy. You know, I feel like he's sending them missiles out there, and some of them are sticking out because he's got he's got a lot of chat, a lot of people talking. So it's been good promotion for the book. I've seen a lot of promotion. My IG timeline seems to be full of this book promotion. I think the hardcore fans are always going to buy the book, the likes of us. It's getting those people who, you know, have got a passing interest in the music to actually buy the book and take interest. So I think, you know, maybe him and his manager or his publicist are probably thinking of the strategies to promote this book. And yeah, he's been doing a good job so far.
Okay. So, Mark, welcome. Teddy Stromberg, welcome. So, Malik, welcome as well. As you guys can see, Strong. As you guys can see, that we've put the chat live, so that's because I know many of you guys have read the book as well, and so you can comment, and it's going to be live. So you're part of the show talking about his book and things that you appreciated and things you probably didn't. So everything is written there, so it isn't just going to be our point of view. And Mark mentioned speaking on Sally Richardson, a married woman, was distasteful and unnecessary as well. I mean, there are things that you probably, I do wonder on reflection, if he was to go through the book again, whether it things. But I think the Sally Richardson story especially around making some of the songs, recording some songs, were well documented. I mean, he's brought them up before, inspirations for I Can Remember the Time and stuff like that. So I guess it's hard not to mention it. But any thoughts, guys?
I was surprised because the only woman he named in the book was that. That said, I mean, she's beautiful. So to me, I was just kind of like, oh, go Ted, and I was kind of like, remember the time. It made me respect this song even more, to be honest with you. I did wonder whether or not she was aware her name was going to be brought up, but all it did, and just also really quick, I came away from the book with really a sense of empathy and the fact that, we're all just human and we're all just trying to figure life out. I mean, that's really what I came away with. I mean, this was definitely like Teddy was not just, he wasn't this godlike producer to me anymore. He was just someone who was just trying to survive, from the Harlem days all the way through, and then kept getting jerked over and over again financially. But overall, all he wanted to do was make music, and I can respect that. So it changed my opinion of him. Even my whole life, just kind of watching him progress and then doing the NGS Forever thing and everything, it just put a lot of things in perspective. But going back to what I said earlier, Sally is definitely not an unattractive woman. And as a man, I'm just saying, like, that's what's up, man. But anyway, he's all, she made my dreams come true. I'm like,
the question here is no mention of Brandon B. Dogs in the book. Is there a case for the people who didn't make it, like Tammy Lucas, wasn't there? Corell Henderson wasn't there.
Lots of people. Akhil wasn't mentioned, Akhil Davidson. But then I think with a book like this, because if you're as prolific as somebody like Teddy Riley, there's so many people that have come into your life, so many people that you've interacted with. It's hard to list everybody. But I think if he had perhaps mentioned some of those names, all of the names you mentioned, I think should have been mentioned. Brandon B. Dogs, even Keith Cohen, who was in Rex and Effect as well. They were Teddy's groups. Like I know Rex and Effect isn't a Teddy group per se. He wasn't a member of the group. I mean, they argued during the Hard or Smooth period that he was, but I think they could have been mentioned. But there are other parts in the book where he's talking about people he'd like to work with or people that have given him respect and shown him this and that. And I don't think that was necessary because you're Teddy Riley. Like, he's talking about Bruno Mars. And I get that context. He was talking about Bruno Mars.
When he gave the speech at the Grammys, yeah.
Shouting out him, LA and Babyface and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. But there are other artists he said, I'd like to work with. Or I don't think he needed to say that because that's a line taken up where you could have mentioned Tammy Lucas, say, for example.
That's so funny. It's so funny. I think it's going to be a fun one because for me, when that moment was a big moment for me, number one, because I remember watching that ceremony live and Bruno all of a sudden says, Teddy Riley, LA and Face, and Jam and Lewis in the exact order that the NJS Forever site had mentioned who created New Jack Swing. I said Teddy was a trailblazer, LA and Face were the hit makers, and Jam and Lewis were the magicians. So I thought to myself, man, did young Bruno Mars go to NJS Forever back in 2002 and like just learn about it? Because he must have, right? So the fact that felt good. And then to have Teddy Riley mention that moment, like in his book, it was very full circle. Because the thing is, now that NJS Forever isn't like the only thing that's talking about New Jack Swing, you got people talking about Control being like, Nasty being the first New Jack Swing song. But back in 2002, I was trying to say, no, this is what New Jack Swing is. It's I Want Her. It's Groove Me. We were kind of telling the story. So to me, it was actually really good. But again, this is great because I think we're all going to have different perspectives on what this was. And all four of us here have met Teddy. Obviously, this book means a lot to us. I mean, I walked into this podcast thinking to myself, this is one of the most important podcasts I've ever done. I listened to the Future album in preparation for this podcast. This is a big deal.
Okay. Stevie, I haven't heard much from you today.
Yeah, I'll be honest. What I really enjoyed about the book was, I'd already heard about him in his younger years being like a genius with his keyboards and his drums, but I didn't know how it all came about. So it was just fascinating to read those early years, how he got his breaks, how he's working with that really early group, and how he was, like you say, he was hustling, how he was trying to keep his mum happy, try to stay off the streets. That journey there was, because normally when you interview musicians, you want to get to the good bits about the music and how they did this, did that, but the build up to it all was absolutely fascinating. The people that were around him, like the gangsters, not Gene Griffin, but the other people around Rooftop, all looking out for him when he got robbed. I mean, I also feel the book seems to me it's aimed at people who probably don't even know who Teddy Riley are. If they picked up this, if someone had a passing interest in music now and thought, who's Teddy Riley, or was given this book, I really feel it's like it's aimed at them. It's like, all right, you know nothing about me. This is me. The likes of us, we know half his story. We've heard tons of stuff. So I think he knew. You know what I mean? That's probably why a lot of them names, VJ, you're talking about, were left out. The hardcore fans knew them names anyway. I just think he was probably aiming the book at a mainstream, mentioning Bruno Mars, and there was a chapter where he was talking about all the accolades he'd got. This person did this, and this person said this about me, and I achieved this, and I achieved that. Not a chapter I enjoyed that much, but I suppose it was important to get out there to tell people who might not have known about him, this is what I've done. So it is documented. People will then know then. You know, he's not just done No Diggity. He's not just done Rump Shaker. He's done all this. He's done a bit of K-pop. You know what I mean? He's done all these other 2000 hits that I'd forgotten about, like Mel B. I'd forgotten all about that, really. You know, so yeah. Like I say, I enjoyed the book.
Yeah, Andrew, you were saying something?
I just wanted to jump in, and I just think as one of the hardcore fans, like there was a few times where like these dates are off, man. Like this is not how it went down. He was talking about the whole Dangerous kind of like in 1991, and it was like it would have happened like a little earlier because Dangerous dropped like in like September 91. But anyways, little things. But Namdi, you're asking us questions, but I know you clearly have an opinion on some of these things. I want to make sure you also get a chance to say what your thoughts were.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think, there was an interview he did with Ed Lover. Probably, I listened to it online or so, and it was probably one of the most in-depth interviews he's ever done because he went through a lot of these things a little bit more in depth, and as some of those who are really good fans of Teddy would have heard a lot of these things in pieces. I think for me, I probably wanted to hear more of the stories around the music. I wanted to hear about the Kumo D LL Cool J battle, and that was almost Teddy Riley versus Marley Marl. Did it feel like a rivalry? Because Marley still thinks he created New Jack Swing because he did stuff with Heavy D. So there's still parts of that I thought, it'd be interesting if that came about. I probably wanted to understand how he felt in the studio and some of the engineers that he worked with, and I think I wanted to hear a little bit more about the Future album. I think. And even the Guy album, I think he just kind of didn't really go too much into what it was like. He was creating history with the Guy album, and he created history, and then subsequently he did say that Aaron felt, depressed because of the fact that they were recording the Future album and they realized they had no money. But a little bit more about how they managed to pull it together. No, he said he sang more songs because Aaron just didn't want to. But I wanted to get a little bit more about what was it like. How did you, how come Damien didn't get to sing more then, and balance it out? So there was things like that I really hadn't heard that I'd want to see. Why he didn't work on history, because he did 30 plus with Dangerous. It would have been almost obvious that he would have come back and did some more stuff with Michael on history. So there was a few things like that I was hoping to get, but that was some of my things. Yeah, I mean, people, as you're commenting, just remember it's live, so everyone's going to see it. So Nish was saying the Blackstreet part was poor. Yes, definitely creating the Guy and Future albums, vaccines what was needed. Yeah, I mean, that was just my thing. I mean, I felt like if this was part one, I think he owes us a part two that then Teddy Riley, the man behind the music, and then he goes through the songs and stuff like that, because I wanted a little bit more of that.
I think Stevie, what you said was the most very interesting. I never thought of it like that. You've said something which has really impacted the way I'm looking at this book now. Now, when I've read this book, I've read this book how VJ would like the book to be. I've had it in my mind. I want to see him talk about this. Like Namdi, you've talked about Guy, you've talked about history. You want him to talk more about the history album, what happened there, and all of that stuff. So we all have our little things that we would like to have been included in the book. But I think, as you said, Stevie, I think Teddy was trying to cater for a wider audience. And he did an interview with somebody, I can't remember who it was, and Teddy was saying it seemed like there was a bit of insecurity there. And when he was talking, it came over like, I want people to know who I am now, and I want to still be relevant. And the guy said, "What are you talking about? You're Teddy Riley, dude. You are always relevant." And I think sometimes the mind plays tricks on you, and you have this idea that comes into your head, and you think you're not. You don't realize how much of a badass you are. It's Teddy Riley, man. He's an absolute badass. And I think he wanted to cater this particular book, this particular memoir, to the masses. And I think it wasn't necessarily to like people like us, because we're lunatics, man. We live and breathe this stuff. You know what I mean? Like we're different. And I think, maybe Teddy made the right decision there, because if you want to reach the masses, that's the way to go, isn't it? Talk about.
I'm trying to think of this scenario. Like, you know, when you go in a library, years ago, I used to go in a library. I'd go in the music section, and there'd be tons of books about artists, bands, managers, whatever. And you've got to think, you try to select a book, and you're pulling books out, and you go, "I wonder who this is," or "I wonder who that is," or I'll try it. And his book is going to be in that library at some point, and somebody who's probably not heard of him is going to pull that book out and go, "Teddy Riley, I've sort of heard of him." But on the other flip, I'm just very, very grateful to get a book. He said years ago that there's a book coming out and we're going to do a movie. And there has been, with Teddy, you get a lot of talk. He'll say, like, "Oh, there's a new guy," or "There's a new Blackstreet album coming out." And it never happens. And I thought, it might never happen. So to actually see this, have it in my hand, and just have something now for reference, it's very easy to be critical here about what's not in the book, but look what we've got inside the book, and what we've found out. So I'm just grateful to have the book, really, very grateful.
Our old friend Sheldon. Great point all around. There are others needed to be fleshed out as well. If you can send me, okay, Sheldon, I'll get you on. Yeah, so I'll get you, Sheldon. I think there's as I said, DJ All Day mentioned that you're correct. The Ed Lover interview. Have you guys listened to that interview? It was done by 20 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah, a while ago. Yeah,
it was an older, but I learned more about Teddy from that interview than I've from anything else, because it was him really going through. I mean, Ed, because Ed knows the stuff, and he was really hitting on some of those things. So I learned a lot more from a lot of those things. I think the tone of Pharrell being almost this, like, being mentioned, because he was a kid. Chad was there's not that balance, because Pharrell has gone on to become a billionaire. There's too much hyping of Pharrell, and very little mention of Rodney and some of the other producers in the camp as well. And so I think that, as I said, there's so much he could have spoken about, and I think that was things that I as a fan that I already know about was in the book, and I wanted to hear a little bit more detail about the creative part and stuff. And then that was my disappointment. But as you guys have said, if you didn't know who he is, then this was definitely a good introduction as well. I mean, Vijay, did you have parts that you really enjoyed?
I liked hearing. Firstly, I liked the foreword by Barry Michael Cooper. I loved that, because he was the man that coined the term New Jack Swing. So just even, I mean, he's passed away relatively recently. So the fact that Teddy has this, it means everything. I think that he is the one that did the foreword for this. I think it's very important. And I'm so happy that his thoughts are in there, because I think what Barry Michael Cooper mentions in the book is that Teddy was the music guy and he was the creative side on another side, and they were like kindred spirits and they were yin and yang. And I loved how Barry Michael Cooper explained that, and that was great. I love the early years, as Stevie mentioned. I love the mention of the rooftop ice skating rink and everything that went down there. I love when he talked about Total Climax, which Omar Chandler was in there as well, who was an incredible singer in his own right.
Was that the group that Jackie McGee was in a group with him? Was that the same group?
I think it's the same one. I think.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't. And also, because I there were two groups he did with Timmy. You know, first Kids at Work, and then they did they were a duo. And and I think that there was not much about the fact that, okay, yes, we did the Kids at Work, and he said in different interviews about, I think Corell has mentioned that because they didn't get to mix the album, it would have sounded better. But and they were as big as New Edition, especially on the East Coast. I mean, it's more of that. It just felt kind of brushed away. Let's just move into other areas, and maybe it's the publisher saying, "Look, just make it a pop book, make it pop so that people who don't know you can appreciate it."
And the other thing I just wanted to say that I thought was really amazing was the struggles that Teddy had, what his mother meant to him. That was amazing, because he's talking about the struggles that he had, and taking his mum, Markel, the sister, all to a nicer place to live. He made that happen. And I just thought that was incredible to read. I think all of us can relate to having a struggle here and there, and how we cope with it, what we do to get out of that situation, if we get out of that situation. And Teddy found a way, and you could tell he was very proud of himself, as he should be. He smashed it. He took his mum out of the projects and took her to a nicer place, and he took the whole family with him. And I thought that was very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Andrew, I mean, from you, were the highlights from the book that you really appreciated?
1,000%. And I think BJ touched on it. Basically, when I talk about perspective, I talk about the fact that, to me, this music stuff, it's great. It's what he does, but there is a purpose and a point, and he's trying to just live his life and then provide the best upbringing he can for his kids. So, for example, when I learned that, he wants to audition for a band, and they say straight up, if we don't like what you do, we're taking your keyboard. I mean, that's the reality of his situation. And then the robbery that happened at that studio that one of his unks ran, where I think someone got, smacked in the ear with a gun. I think it was actually, might have been Leveva. Like, all that stuff, like, I didn't know, then, so to me, it's like, it's all well and good that we, as, I'll just say it, fans of the music, clamor for what he created. But at the same time, like, yes, it's a big part of his life, but it's not his whole life. So it's like, to us, it could be like, oh my God, this is this amazing song, like, let's chill, whatever. But to him, it's like, look, that was just something I did to, like, make an album. So, because I was like, I was broke, I got a new contract from MCA, publishing with Zomba, and I'm just trying to survive. I'm trying to live, and then, like, I make money, I lose money. I make money, I lose money. It's like this music thing, it's just a part of his entire life. And it just put everything in perspective. We're all just human. We're all just trying to, like, get through this thing and trying to, like, raise our vibration. And those people whose vibrations are lower than yours, you got to cut them off, and I think that was a big part of the book as well. I'll also say I really enjoyed when he focused on the verses thing, because I think COVID, while it was a tough time for a lot of people, COVID was how Halftime Chat was born. I know that, myself, Beach, like, we all got together and watched that verses. It was like we were living it. It was a big. I remember what I was eating and drinking. I was drinking ginger ale and, like, ginger ale and shoot, it's a rum, it's an Irish whiskey. Anyway, it was fun, you know.
Amazing.
So it just, again, I keep talking a lot, but I'll just say this: it's all about, he was human, and I think that's what I got from the book. Not perfect, warts and all, human, who had great music that touched a lot of people and brought people together.
You're right about the fact that he took time to talk about the verses, because I think it also took me back, because I missed I got in just before the first one that they went on, and Teddy was set up in the studio. And the reason, and people who wouldn't have followed Teddy wouldn't have realized that he and Keith were doing live shows. So they'd already set it up. They were doing their live shows. I think Silk did something. So I think it was out of Keith's house. They were doing live broadcasts. So he knew that, this could work. And he had already done one with Dave Hollister and some others. And so he knew the stuff would work. So when they come in the verses, the issue wasn't on his side. The issue was Instagram had not been set up for that many people to watch. And so the feedback and stuff was a big Instagram stuff. And so he got slammed, and he survived that and still came back. And then what the verses end up doing? Yeah, let's try and do the live stuff, because that seems to be. So he needed to get his flowers for the fact that he was an innovator from that point. But also the fact that he, when he did work with, he finally did it with Babyface. It was so overwhelming. I remember, if you look at the comments, Michelle Obama is in the house. I mean, it was almost like this was the massive event, and it crashed because it wasn't set up for that. So he's a trendsetter, not just with the music, but what they did with the verses. I'm still disappointed that he picked the wrong song, Deep. Oh, God have mercy. And I hated the fact that he did those remixes, because he gave people the shot to come after him. He could have won that easily with his first 10 songs. So I'm still always upset when I remember verses. But anyway, yes, so definitely have to be giving him his flowers in that.
And another aspect of, as you touched upon there as well, Andrew, the human side, that was amazing to see, because we saw his vulnerable side. That's what I'm saying. It's like he was talking about just the struggles and all the things, the warts and all, that things weren't easy. He was trying to find a way. And when people are honest, and I think he was very honest in this book, and when you're a bit vulnerable, people can relate to that, because we all need to be a little bit like that to really resonate with somebody, like to connect with somebody, to see that side. And he was sharing that side of him, and I thought that was very cool, man, because
I'm talking a lot, but I'll try to like reel it in. But basically, the emotion I got from, or the vibe I can get, I'm not saying from Teddy, but like from other people, is almost like, well, what do you want from me? Like, basically, it's like, look, like, I know that you're a big fan of what I do, but like, leave me alone, dude. Like, it's not that serious. Like, I'm just trying to live. And, you know, getting that feeling, but now seeing like, this is what you were going through all this time. Like, I get why you might be like Michael Jackson, leave me alone, because it's like, I know that you think I'm all that, but I'm really not all that. I'm just like you, but I'm just trying to do the best that I can with what I've been given. Like, that's all I'm trying to do. And that's what I got. So whether you're, you know, New Edition, or whether you're whoever, it's like, yeah, you might look like you're all that on stage, but meanwhile, as soon as you get off that stage, it's back to like whatever drama that's going on in your life. And there's only so much bandwidth that you have to deal with anything. So I do think being an icon or a legend or whatever, it's a lot of pressure that you frankly didn't ask for. All you're trying to do is do what you do and make the world a better place. And I do think that he did a good job of making the world a better place musically, because we're all here, you know, together, knowing each other, having community around that. So to me, it's like, I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot. Let me just say, I just respect. Like, that's literally what I came away from the book with. Respect. Like, you did your thing, man. Like, you should feel good about, you create a whole genre, man. Or at least, and yes, other people could have been mentioned, and that I will admit that was a little, but again, that's just the imperfection. And maybe those folks need to get out there and tell their stories.
Yeah. Go
You
ahead,
said,
V.
Marco, I hardly agree with you and lots of stuff that you say, but today you shared about 3 or 4 points that I think are spot on. You said, firstly, how can you fit everything in one book? Absolutely agree with you. You said Teddy is many things, but he's an absolute genius. Yes. So that's it. I just wanted to share. Marco, I agree with you because often we do not agree. So just putting that out there.
Okay. Chuck was saying that Teddy was known for his remixes, and no doubt about that. But I guess my and this is going back to the verses thing. If he had just, I think he gave, because Babyface says when he did the remix of "I Get So Lonely," he says, "I thought Jimmy and Terry did that," and then he did the Human Nature remix, and Brian Alexander Morgan and others were like, and All Star were like, "Yeah, I did the beats," and so it distracted from his stuff, and my thing was always, if he had just done Just Got Paid and I Wanna, if he had just done, some of the just a number of those, the show, if he had just put some of these things out, it would have just rum shaking. If he had just 10 of those bangers first, Babyface would have just been like scrambling around with ballads, and the up tempos would come through, and that's what I meant, that he could have just slammed that easily with just 20 hits that he went in the studio and did on his own. And he did a couple of those remixes. Then he played deep, and it just felt like, oh man, City is Mine. That was one of Jay-Z's worst songs, and it was like, yeah, I'm gonna put it out. Then Foxy Brown, as well, which was done by Trackmasters, and then so it was. He didn't have. L.A. Reid has said on an interview that he and Babyface went through the track list and, okay, you're gonna play this. So they really planned it out, and I think Teddy just almost like, okay, I can play this one. I think he did. He needed somebody in his corner to really say, okay, what are you gonna play? No, don't do that. Do this. But anyway,
I think another funny moment was when Face was like, I'm just here, social distancing, right? Because like back then when we're all just in our own spots, and Teddy's like, singing with a whole bunch of people, like no masks everywhere. It did seem a little like, like you kind of like whereas Face is chilling there, unbothered, got the glass, got the Grammy in the back with the wine.
yeah.
It was okay. One last thing, culture is what I'm about. And, whether it's the New Jack Swing culture, whether it's the culture tour, or even the verses being a cultural moment, like that's the other piece that like I'll stop in a second. But the reason why I cleaved to New Jack Swing, just 100%, I've said it many million times, it was an expression, in my opinion, of Black culture, right? But it's an inclusive Black culture. It's not like, hey, only Black people can do this. It's in a world that in a world that shits on Black people, okay, we are coming up with an art form that everyone loves and we can be proud of, okay? So to me, it was like, as a kid, I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. And it's just like, because Michael Jackson was like the biggest Black force on the planet. And the fact that Michael then went and jumped on the New Jack Swing bandwagon says so much, because then NJS was like the biggest positive Black force on the planet, okay? But now I realize Teddy probably wasn't thinking any of that. Andrew, you put that all on him. He wasn't trying to like uplift like Black culture. He was just making music. Calm down, So but at the same time though, again, Versus was a moment. So much of a moment that TMZ's like, wow, what are these Black people doing? We're shutting down Instagram. That's what we're doing, So to me, it was just, that's what I get excited about. That's what I get passionate about. But I now understand and had the perspective that when people are part of a cultural movement, even if they're creating it, they might not even know what they're doing. And Barry Michael Cooper was even like, do you have any idea what you're doing right now? This is New Jack Swing. It's crazy. Life is a trip. Just do your best and let the chips fall where they may. All right, I'm gonna try to be quiet for like 20 minutes.
Stevie, what were your favorite bits about the book? What did you really love? What did you really?
I'm gonna the most interesting stuff as well that I found, because I wanted to hear his perspective on. We got to bring this man's name up. We can't really escape this, because the shadow of Gene Griffin kept going well past the split that they had. He was still in the background, but it's interesting the timeline of when Kids at Work split up to when Gene went in prison for whatever tax evasion or whatever it was. Then they formed Guy. How the future would have been so different. It seemed like when they formed Guy, Gene Griffin gets out of prison, and they go to Gene, to be their manager, and they get the deal with MCA. If Gene had not got out of prison, it would have got a deal probably through Andre, through MCA, or even Tommy Boy, one or the other. They probably would have had a different manager, and it could have been a different route for Guy. It could have been completely different. But I'd love a book from Gene. It's just, we're never going to get that now, obviously, because he's not here. Or, maybe his wife could do something, but that shadow years later, it's always in the background of Gene. I have a lot more love for Gene Griffin now, believe it or not.
Wow.
Because he's such a big part of New Jack Swing. Not obviously making the music, but in what he did in the background and putting people together. He said even years later when he was putting, did he mention 911 or some Blackstreet where he said some of the members had to pay Gene money to get out of a deal? I found that fascinating. That's what I mean. They still weren't rid of him. Very interesting stuff. But like you say, Gene Griffin, I've got more. I know, considering what he did and the amount of money he took from Teddy, I still got a bit of love for old Gene, really. And I wanted to hear Teddy's side. I did really wanted to hear that, and we got it. We did get it.
Okay. Guys, as you are commenting, as I said, it's part of the show, because it's not just in the comments, but you can see it in the video stream as well. I think we're jumping around. I think the breakthrough or pivotal moment of GR Productions was between 88 and 89, or just onto the end of 89, beginning of 1990, where he was just so busy. He didn't talk. One of the things I wish I'd heard about was getting to work with the Jacksons. Now, he said in an interview, and this was the interview he did with Ed Lover, that he got to work with everyone but Michael, that Michael recorded his own vocals separately, and he was disappointed about that. But I thought it'd be interesting if he had brought it up to see what it was like being this young kid, and the Jackson family said, we want you to produce a song that all of us are going to feature. And I mean, that's monumental, because I don't know who else has done a song featuring all of the Jacksons on there, and stuff. It was interesting that he mentioned about Michael talked about trying to get him to work on Bad. I did wonder about the time frame, because and whether Michael wanted to do some remixes from Bad, or actually try to bring him in earlier. So there were just a few things that I was trying to get my head around. But it was interesting that Michael had heard of him before they worked on Dangerous, and I do wonder if it's because of the 2300 Jackson Street.
It's got to be remixes. I think if Teddy was going to work on Bad, it's got to have been the remixes, because Bad came out in 87, right?
Yes.
So the remix, like the production, would have been 86, 87. Would you say that's about?
Yeah. About 86. Yeah.
And I think, when did Make It Last Forever album come out? 87.
87. Yeah.
November.
And when did the first Heavy D album come out? Was that 86?
I think that was 86, actually.
That was 86. So maybe I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe
But-
I think remixes would make sense.
But one of my favorite moments in the book was actually learning that those iconic riffs, "Do You Remember Girl," "On the Phone," "You and Me," was inspired by Bobby Brown at the end of My Prerogative. That I did not know. And it made the fact that Bobby didn't even want to do the track, like he actually left. He's like, peace, because Teddy was like, my way or the highway. Bobby's like, deuces. And then it was, I think Lou Salas was like, you better get your ass back in the studio. So Bobby goes back in, and this time he's feeling it. And then, why you want to talk about me? All that is Bobby. He came up with that. So to me, it gave me more respect for Bobby because he was able to just kind of do that. And then MJ, literally the biggest star on the planet, is like, I want to do that. I want to be like Bobby. So the fact that MJ would try, like, that's a huge compliment to Bobby. But the thing is, MJ did the damn thing, because I've been at those dances where it's the MJ versus Prince parties, and the whole crowd
MJ versus Prince.
Double that, like, those ad libs they're both iconic. So I just love that. That was amazing in the book.
Yeah. I did. Who was it? Rodney spoke about Michael had a playlist, and he did have I'll Be Sure on it, and Bobby. So he was into the variety. And as I said, I'm going back to those who went there. We didn't get much from I'll Be Sure, and I thought he would expand, because he's the one that brought up the fact that I'll Be Sure sang on the second verse of You Can Call Me Crazy. Yeah. But as I said, it'll be interesting just to be able to look at the fact that he mentioned the Korean stuff, and how he got there first, and how he was the first person to bring up to work with in that field. And I wondered if he could have done more and spent more time there. But he made the hits, and he kind of came back and then opened the door for others. Did you know much about when he did that? When he was working in Korea?
I heard about there was a guy concert in several concerts in Tokyo and Kyoto, I believe. So I knew that they were touring. I think it was around the same time that he started this work with the K-pop thing. And I think I might have said to you, Andrew, I was thinking about going at the time, and I didn't, and I was gutted, because they're intimate gigs. There's like 200-300 people in those little venues, and to see all three of the guy members performing there would have been incredible. But what he said about K-pop around that same time, I didn't know that. But I think a lot of the boy bands, you think of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, all of them, they all ripped off New Jack Swing.
1000%.
It's all New Jack Swing.
Yeah.
So he was already a trendsetter back then. And K-pop is him just redoing stuff that he's already done, and he's doing it again, and it's become K-pop. And I love that he's one of the main people behind that sound.
Did it surprise you guys that we are hearing the villain throughout the whole book is Gene, but then it almost it comes full circle as how he ends it, because everything he pulls up about Gene, you're like, yes, there he is. He knew about all the credits and everything, and it felt like, yes, he's really going to pull him down. But it was almost like a Schindler's List moment, where at the end he was like, yeah, Gene couldn't help himself, but I kind of forgave him and made up with him at the end. And I'm like, man, I'm angry for you, man. Just keep being angry to him. Why did you forgive him, kind of thing. But it was something that, at least that was his story, and that was his hurt, and he was able to say, you know what, this guy did a lot to me, but I didn't want it to hold me back. So so that was an interesting point. Although he didn't, I mean, talking to Damien, talking to Timmy, they all say that Gene was really, he was a very smart guy. No, he was well dressed, well groomed, and he made them always look like $1 million. And I don't know why he couldn't do the same with Basic Black. But Gaio came out looking like black rock stars, with their GUI at the back and how they dressed. With the sun Ray bands and stuff. They always came out looking like larger than life bands. And I think Sprague was talking about that Gene would make them rehearse and rehearse to get their act together and stuff. So I think there was a lot that he brought in, and I think they appreciated some of that, but wish he hadn't. He had been a little bit more. He didn't take their money.
But then I think what you're saying about Gene is fascinating, and I thought that was probably the most interesting thing, because when I personally think about Teddy's production sounds, my favorite period, I think, was the GR Productions period. I think it was amazing, like that sound. And did Gene do it, and with Teddy, or did Teddy do it? We've hashed that conversation out to death over various podcasts. And the fact that Teddy was so honest about his experiences with Gene, I thought it was good to see so much honesty. And then you have the vulnerability, which you saw in between in the book, little different bits, the problems that he had, the challenges that he had. And then when he gets to the end of the book, it's like all of us. We learn from our life experiences, and our life experiences make us stronger. And by the end of the book, he's talking about forgiveness. And that shows a lot of growth. So he's saying, yes, this happened to me. Yes, it was hard. It sucked. But I'm at this point in my life now, and I forgive him. And he was actually very kind to Gene in the end. And that is so nice to see, because regardless of what had happened, he knows the impact of Gene's presence in his life was good or bad in the beginning. Gene did get him on that pedestal, get him to that place, if that makes sense.
Gene was a father figure, and he says that many times in the book, because he talks about how his real father wasn't really around. And to me, like, again, when you start talking about life and death, in my opinion, then everything else just stays to the background. So to me, when you've got those moments in the book where there are these councils being called at bars, where it's like, okay, so I hear that you have a contract out on Teddy. And then, Gene's like, he's my own son. Why would I do that? But the thing is, you're dealing with, basically, their word was hustlers, but, hustlers, gangsters, whatever you call it. And to me, that whole world, to me, makes the whole music thing become like, that's just on the side, man. Like, that's just what we do. That's like, we do this, but like the real stuff is like, what we're doing. You saw The Godfather Part 2, that one Italian like singer at the wedding, whatever. Right? Either way, it's like, that's over there, but the real life, the mainstream is this. So to me, Gene probably came from another world, and the Gene that he became was probably the best guy he knew how to be. And I loved that scene where it's his mom and him and Gene, and they kind of confront him. And when Gene realizes, I'm going to lose my golden goose, and actually I'm like, yeah, maybe the reason why Gene couldn't have Basic Black, all that, whatever, was because he already had lost his golden goose. Teddy was it, and Teddy was the money machine. It sucks that like Gene took all that money, But I think that in order for Teddy to heal, yes. And also what's crazy to me is, but I get it, is Alzheimer's he had to make peace with him while he had a chance, because if he was already, if his mind was gone, it's too late. So I think Teddy did the right thing, honestly, just close the book on that thing, because yes, without Gene, none of this would have happened. It wasn't perfect, but life isn't perfect, man. I got to get up on my soapbox. But anyway, I want to talk about the gangster stuff, because the gangster stuff was real. And if you would ask me in 8th grade in 1991 that Teddy actually had to worry about his life and that there was gunplay involved, I wouldn't have believed it, or at least wouldn't have wanted to believe it. But now I'm like, I think a lot of us, if you will, like making music, especially if you're from New York or wherever, that's what you had to rise out from. And to me, it's like, you can't be thinking all this heal the world, rah, rah, rah shit. It's like, I'm trying to live. So I'm just trying to live.
Yeah, I think.
Hey, Namdi, we need to talk about. We need to tell the viewers. There's some very interesting pictures in this book, and believe it or not, Namdi inadvertently has made Teddy Riley's book. One of Namdi's pictures is in Teddy Riley's book. Teddy doesn't know it. We know it. So Namdi, tell him about that picture that's in Teddy's book, will you?
Do you want to show it if you have it, because you don't have it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, this one.
yeah, okay, so yeah, okay, yeah. So that, I remember, because normally times when I think I interviewed Darkchild, and he was talking about when yeah, with Teddy and Michael in the studio. So one of the pictures I've used in more of my videos is the picture of Teddy and Gene Griffiths in the studio, and all I pretty much use it all the time. And so I just thought about, how do I get Teddy didn't have many pictures of him and Michael, not onto. I mean, I've just seen that one with him on there, and so I just photoshopped it and just put Michael in there, and on a YouTube, when you're doing it as a YouTube thumbnail, you can't necessarily tell that it's it's real, because it's crunched in. I think in a book somebody saw it, and I hadn't gotten the hard copy yet, so I didn't realize that it was put in there, and somebody scoured the internet, saw it, and said this was Teddy and Michael recording Dangerous in 91. What studio was that? Larrabee's in 91. And that was definitely 89, and it was definitely not there. And unfortunately, I think it didn't look good. And of course, Teddy's not the one. He might have just looked and said, that looks like, could it does it? I mean, if you look at it, did you notice that it didn't look real?
It looks real to me. The way it's been pixelated down into this book, you wouldn't know. You just wouldn't know. You just wouldn't know. Mind you, it does. There's sort of a line here.
Yeah.
That gives it away. The Photoshop line, it just doesn't feel right at all, this line, when you really look at it closely.
I read it on my Kindle, and it's in black and white, and it just looks super.
Yeah, his hand cuts off. Teddy's hand cuts off there.
Because it was just, because we were both wearing red, it was just something simple. Just, okay, here's a video talking about Teddy and working in Michael. I had no idea. I mean, and I do I do a lot of those all the time. I mean, I did one with me and Michael in the studio, and me trying to talk to him, and he was not paying. He was just looking at the camera, like, Michael, let's talk about the making of this. And actually, people thought it was real. But it's like, but it's yeah. So you have to blame his management team, who didn't see that without submitting it in. But yeah.
Can I try something really quick? This is very off the cuff. I'm going to see if I can share my screen, because I just want to show really quickly a picture. Are you guys seeing this picture right now? Do you see it or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So that's Teddy Riley. That's myself in 2005. I'm going to come off sharing in a minute.
Wait a minute.
This happened.
This Teddy?
That's Teddy, and that's me. I was a little chubbier back then, but that's me.
Okay. And who's the guy in the middle? That looks like a 1950s film.
All right. So coming off. So basically, his name is Zapman. So I wanted to show that picture because it's a special moment. Obviously, I met Teddy that night, but I also met somebody else for the first time that night as well. And that individual was none other than VJ Jode Chandegra. And that was in, I want to say, August of 2005. And afterwards, we actually went and hung out at Mel's Diner afterwards. It was a concert that Teddy had put on. He was a headliner at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. So it was Teddy by himself, but then he had, I think, Guy was there. Blackstreet was there. And then you also had, Johnny Gill, You had Mel DeVoe, and I'm forgetting one more person.
Casey and JoJo, Gerald Levert were on stage.
Gerald Levert, R.I.P. Yeah, so it was a great show. Unfortunately, Guy ended early because they had gone past. But I just wanted to show that because I just wanted to show that.
And it looks like
not
Chris
only
Thomas.
did I saw that. Not only did I meet Neej that night as well, but also saw, but didn't approach, but I'll approach him later. Jimmy Jam, he was there too, just to support Teddy. It was a beautiful night, man. I just felt like we were talking about pictures. I just wanted to like bring that up because that's why I think that this book is just it's a big deal. You know, this is like Teddy's the reason why we're all on this damn podcast. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think, Vijay, you mentioned something about the fact that I think he doesn't realize how much of an influence he is. And I think there is, and you know, it's probably something that it may not come as easy for him because there was no need to be able to. He started off by saying, oh, and my songs, you know, these people have sampled me and this person mentioned me. Almost like, well, if you know who you are, it could be seen as arrogant. But, you know, there is a legacy out there that, you know, Babyface or Jimmy and Terry tend to know. And Teddy just felt like, yeah, I don't know how many people know who I am. And it's always nice when somebody mentions me and stuff. And I'm like, this Teddy, you know, you don't know how much you've influenced us around the world. And I think that was part that I wish. I do wonder if Barry Michael Cooper was still around, and he wasn't, because when I was supposed to interview him, he said things he had lost his son, he had lost a number of family members, so he was not in a great space, and he says he's watching and but not in a great space to be able to do an interview at the moment and it was grieving. But I wondered if he was in a better space, would he have done a better job of helping Teddy tell his story? Because he was there from the beginning, so he would have been able to emphasize and promoted Teddy as, you know, the king of black R&B, well, New Jack, and what that meant to the culture. I don't know if this ghostwriter who supported him understood the assignment and shaped it in a way that could have been could have added make it a little bit more richer. That's just a thought. I could be wrong. Or did you guys have any thoughts about the how the co-writer might have how the shift of the book was?
I think it boils down to how much you know about a subject. If you're writing about something, if you're writing an essay, or if you're writing a whole book, it's important that you know about the subject. Mm-hmm. And I understand that the co-author, Jake Brown, I believe, I think he's known Teddy for quite a while, and I think he's written lots of other books.
Yes. And
the thing that I thought was interesting was the fact that he's written over, I think, a couple of hundred books or over 100 books.
Wow.
So if he's written that many books, then this is saturated. He's like, how much he's actually giving to this particular book, how much are you actually able to give? And I think what you said about Barry Michael Cooper, oh my God, that would have been the book, man.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to get that thought out of my head now. That would have been the book.
Even Nelson George.
Yeah, Nelson George.
Yeah, he'd smash it.
It was like, I think it was all pragmatism. Again, I've become, I think in my older age, like way more pragmatic and way more realistic now. Jake Brown absolutely just had the connections to get the book done. So he had an agent. He basically had the proximity to the power and the money at Simon & Schuster to get it done. That's it. That was the only reason why Teddy probably went with Jake, because Jake had, again, that influence. Nelson George is a legend, not taking anything away from him. However, Nelson might not have the pull now that, say, a Jake Brown does, because the people at Simon & Schuster might all be of, you know, a certain kind of hue or whatever. And they're just like, we don't know. I mean, you're just some guy from back in the day. Hey, Jake, what's up, man? Let's go hang out later. You know, like it's you guys smell what I'm cooking, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the important thing is that at least he had the ability to put out the book?
The strings, the proximity. Yes, that if you can't execute, what's the point? You know, it's until you execute, it's all just talking and flapping your gums, and that's something I don't like to do unless it's a podcast anymore.
Stevie, what did you make of the chapter on Blackstreet, which was chapter 15, Blackstreet and No Diggity?
How profound he went in on Shaughnessy was probably the eye opener. And like I say, he was forming another group again. He's got in his mind what happened with Guy, and it's kind of happening again, really, into egos. But you know, Blackstreet in the inclusion at the beginnings was amazing with Joseph Stone Street. Then he brought Dave Hollister in, but yeah, I mean, the revelation was. Well, I didn't realize Shaughnessy was like he was like an employee around the studio. Shaughnessy, I didn't really know all that, and you know, obviously he went from being that to being a singer in the group, and then obviously having, you know, years later in '96, probably you could argue No Diggity was his last biggest hit. Was there anything as big as that after? I'm not sure. You know, I think that was the peak in terms of hit-wise of his production.
Don't Leave was pretty big though too, but not No Diggity. But Don't Leave was a big one as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say that I'm going to say, was there anything bigger after that? I'm not too sure, but you can correct me on that. But like I say, the whole.
No, that wasn't.
Yeah, it weren't too dissimilar to what he went through with Aaron Hall, really. You know, just the whole ego thing. I think there was egos on all sides. I just don't, you know, I don't think you can just pinpoint on one person's ego. I think I look at Guy and I think they've all got egos. I look at Blackstreet, some of them have egos. Just a shame that, you know, they all fell out over money, really, because that's what it boiled down to. You know, that's what it boiled down to at the end of the day. Money and ego.
And another thing that I thought was interesting was, again, comes to growth. And I think in life, we all need to grow. And I think as sad as it is that it's unlikely we'll see Guy get back together. I mean, the idea that Teddy, Aaron and Damien and even Timmy are never going to perform together, that's just sad. That makes me sad. But if Teddy feels that that is something that he needs to do for his own headspace and for himself, then that makes sense for him as an individual. So we've all got to live our lives as individuals because we're living our life. We're not living it as a collective. We're living it for ourselves. So if that suits Teddy, then that's what he should do. But it is sad that there will be no more Guy. It doesn't feel like there'll be another Guy reunion again. And that hurts. That as a fan, that's a bit upsetting. And with Blackstreet, with what he said about Chauncey there, it seems like that's an impossibility. Like he said, nope, no thank you, never. That's the vibe that I got from what he was saying. And especially with some of the interviews you've seen, he's brought that up again. And it's a categorical no thank you, see you later. Yeah. Right? That's yeah, and that's sad as well because they made great music together. They really did.
Yeah. I was never a fan of Teddy being part of Blackstreet. I just thought that it would take him away from being in the studio, and he showed he could do the two, but I wondered how much of a difference because his contemporaries, you know, Jimmy and Terry, LA and Babyface. At least Babyface had a solo deal, so he could, and he already established himself as a singer. But I know that, you know, with Blackstreet, he had to tour and do the promotions. That meant he wasn't able to be in the studio. And I know he had his bus, but he had to focus on Blackstreet and those remixes and those songs as opposed to other groups. So that was always my thing, was that I was never, I liked when he started off Blackstreet featuring Teddy Riley. I thought, oh, that's great. But when he became and joined them for the album, I just thought, oh man, this might something would give, and his working with others took a sacrifice for that. Was it interesting when he spoke about losing rights to Blackstreet and how he felt that as a betrayal.
I just stay out of the drama, man. Like to me, I'm not serious. Like I feel like that it almost felt like a marital spousal thing. I'm just kind of like whatever. Like, I leave that alone. Honestly, I didn't have an opinion on that.
Okay. Yes. What about when he mentioned about losing the studio and and the whole leaving Virginia?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. A term came in my head, and I'm not going to say it because it's not PC. But I absolutely thought, like, for a second, was that like an insurance play? Like, the studio just burns down all of a sudden. I'm sorry. I'm being real, but there is a term. I think the New Yorkers know what that term is. But I'll just say, was that a case of lightning? I don't know. But that was my thought. The lightning might have struck. Wink, wink.
Okay.
What I didn't understand when he said about when he was, I'm trying to understand the timeline of how Blackstreet was created. So, did Teddy say that he's creating a group he wanted to create a group, and then Chauncey, who worked at Future Studios in whatever capacity he worked at Future Studios, he was asked. He used to be a singer and he was working on his talent. And then Teddy says, "Chauncey, can you find me some singers to create a group?" So doesn't that mean that Chauncey created the group? I'm just trying to understand that, because it seems in one way that Teddy's saying that he created the group, and then on the other side he's asking Chauncey to create the group. Or have I misunderstood something?
You know what? In the
Felt like that. It definitely felt like that.
yeah, but if you watched Teddy Riley, the man behind the music, when they were getting ready to bring out Finally album, it was a BET special, and it was a really good watch because they had some background stuff. In there, Chauncey says that Teddy came to him and says, "I want to put a group together," and Chauncey was like, "Well, group, because they were singing the backgrounds on the Bobby album." And he was like, okay, so he wasn't and he wanted so Chauncey admitted that yes, that Teddy did ask about saying that he wants to put the group together, and asked if he was going to be part of it, and then Chauncey did say, are you going to join in? And he hadn't planned to, and because they had all these guys with Stowe Street and Levi singing background before they moved into it. It was interesting he mentioned Eric, because Chauncey and Eric were a duo, and Eric was there in the beginning because he was just coming from the flex, but Teddy didn't feel as if he was ready to. He was it was an introvert, and so it's interesting he was complimentary towards Eric, and didn't seem to have an issue with Eric. He played or Mark at all. Yes. The part, staying away from sort of the drama is the show, when he's talked about the show, and I don't think there was a timeline as to when because it felt like it was. I thought it would be a little bit earlier when he talks about Rooftop, but he kind of brought it in. He brought it in around chapter 10, after the Keith and the Bobby stuff. But his mum got involved in making sure that he got the publishing, instead of, I think, Dougie Fresh, he offered him like $25 or something like that. And he was excited about that. His mom says, "Man, make sure you get your publishing because and stuff like that." So he was fortunate in that sense because everyone seemed to have known the business but him.
And
Yes.
I think it would have been nice. I mean, this is not in the book, but I think something that would have been good for Teddy at the time, around 92, I would say, is if 92, 93, is if he had made curated a soundtrack of his songs, like Jam and Lewis did Mo Money, LA and Babyface had Boomerang. Teddy should have done a soundtrack, like for a movie. I don't know if that was even a possibility.
That would have been amazing. That would have been amazing.
Yeah. I think the closest thing to it would have been New Jack City, as far as like, doing and he actually did mention doing the title track to it. But no, you're right. It's props. I've never once thought of that in my life. So props to you for that. I also want to apologetically say that I will have to bounce because I am broadcasting from a hotel, late checkout, 4:00 my time. So like 3:46 right now. So if you see me leave at like 4:00 my time, that's why. But
no, we probably might end at that, just so that we don't drag it out too much and stuff. But what would you say then? I mean, going round, I'll start with you, VJ. If you had your favorite parts of the book, what chapters that really spoke to you and you really like, man, I'm glad I read this, because I know we kind of drifted to that sense of what was missing and what we didn't like. But if you looked at the chapters and thought, well, these are the chapters that I really appreciated, what would you say?
I liked that as soon as he worked with Michael Jackson, his fortunes changed. That was nice to hear. I like that he talks about his humble beginnings and how he was creating the sounds for My Prerogative and I Want Her and all the other bits that he did in his mum's apartment, in the bathroom, just because the acoustics were best there. And how Gene Griffin came into his orbit and the problems that he had around that, and how by the end of the book, he had healed from that. And he talked about his when Gene was in the last period of his life, they were like father and son again. And I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was really, really great. One thing I didn't like, as I've mentioned, I didn't think somebody of Teddy Riley's stature needed to mention this person said this or that person said that. Okay. If you haven't worked with them, I don't think there's any value added. I think the Bruno Mars example is an exception because that was a little bit different. And maybe the odd example there makes sense, but he's talking about other people that he'd like to work with or this. And I didn't understand that. I just didn't think that was necessary. And I liked his mother's chapter. I thought his mother's chapter was fantastic. The fact that he had a chapter from his mum sharing her perspective. And I don't know how they would have done that, but that must have been done 2-3 years ago or something. But I thought that was beautiful.
Okay, very good. For those who don't know, so Sheldon, this is VJ, Andrew Knight, and of course Stevie.
Hey folks, how y'all doing?
Hey Sheldon,
how you doing now? It's good seeing y'all.
Yes. I know you got the book from day one and early on and read it and stuff. And for those who are watching and then not knowing Sheldon, I mean, I probably started doing this with Sheldon for almost 4 years ago, and Sheldon stopped when he was working on a book about LL Cool J that he was writing, and he had deadlines, so he had to retire from us. But what are your thoughts on the book, Sheldon?
I got the book and I read it in one night. So I was really excited about getting the book. And one of the things, like just to not belabor the point what you all were saying, is that when you look at creating a book, it's either going to be a memoir or going to be an autobiography. And when you look at the memoir is going to give you like a narrative approach, slice of life, kind of general information, and you're breezing over a lot of things compared to when you're dealing with an autobiography. You're dealing with chronological order, you're dealing historical accuracy, you're dealing with facts, specific elements, things that were actually missing from the book. So I'm thinking, obviously, all of us are big, huge Teddy fans. So coming into looking at the book, there were a lot of different expectations that we had that necessarily weren't met. Big up to Teddy for actually creating the book, because people pass away. And when they pass away, their historical perspective passes away with them. So we got to celebrate him for actually creating a book. One of the things I took issue with the book, and again, I'm an avid reader. I spend about $300 on books annually. So I have my library is extensive. I've got books that I've read that I still have from like almost 40 years ago. So when you look at what Teddy was doing with the book, again, certain elements or whatever that I kind of took issue with that were actually missing. Now, I have an archive of Teddy interviews. This goes back to 1993, and this article that he did is 7 pages long, and it has more details than the book actually has. Same situation right here. This goes back to 1992 when he had the actual studio. So, for anybody who doesn't have the book and they're looking at picking it up, I would say the best way to frame the book as a companion piece to all the other various interviews that he's done over the years. That's the best way to look at it. So the things that I had issue with it, there was some historical facts that were not necessarily correct, um, from things that I've read in the past, listening to the Jack podcasts, different historical references. And I think a large part of that, both what all you gentlemen were talking about, is Barry Michael Cooper and Nelson George would probably been the best authors in terms of writing the book. And the reason why is that they were there around that time and they can actually paint that picture and provide that context. Because one thing about a person who's very creative, you can produce music, you can create music, you can write music, but you may not necessarily be a historian. And I think one of you gentlemen said is that, for us, we either write about history, we film the history, but they're the ones doing the work. So when
Yes.
you're doing the work, and we already know with Teddy Riley, some of the issues, he was almost like a one-man operation where you've got a lot of people depending on him in terms of writing and producing. He's hiring people for business. We already know that the little man life of Riley situation didn't really take off because when you're wearing multiple hats, you can't do everything well. So I think that having someone writing the book, specifically Barry Michael Cooper or Nelson George, will provide that context. Just like you said, Barry Michael Cooper, he lost his son, he lost his wife, he had some other issues that were actually going on. So unfortunately, he was unavailable to write the book, but thankfully he did the foreword to kind of frame everything. So I think he would have been a great choice. The gentleman, Jake Brown, he wrote actually 60 books. And then when you
Eric,
look in terms of who he was when he became exposed to the New Jack Swing era, he was like about 10 years old. He said it at the closing of the book. So that means if you're born in 1978, 79, and no disrespect to that because I'm 57 years old. But at that point, you could write about it, but are you able to answer the significant questions that need to be asked to get everything in the context? And then you all spoke about connections. Well, when a person is writing a book and you're linking up with a publisher, the publisher has they have their own writers within that network.
Exactly.
So if you're going to do business with them, whatever writer that they want, because they're known, that's
Mhm.
what you're going to go ahead and have. But unfortunately, obviously it's great the story went out, but he was unable to go ahead and at least go back and do the research to provide that chronological timeline. Because when you look at the book was written as if everyone knew the information already in certain chapters. So it wasn't written to where it's introducing situations as if people did not know. Obviously the childhood was very good, very informative, one of my favorite parts. But I hated the fact that he didn't talk about when he had the Casio when he was a kid and he took it around with him to the block parties and he used to run around and trying to get home before the street lights had come on, and he broke the Casio when he was a kid. Just certain particular type of stories like that, just kind of going in. Uh, as far as the pictures weren't accurately dated. The timelines were actually mixed up. So I actually created like a general summary and I actually sent it to him in on Instagram. I inboxed them and said, you know, these are some of the things, and I got a response back. I got an email link, and I emailed him, you know, detailed responses or whatever things that, you know, if you're going to put out a second printing of the book, these are some things you might want to go ahead and look at. Some of the things were personal, family oriented, because things that he's talking about, mm, based on what you said before in previous interviews, based on things that I read, it's not necessarily as accurate. I won't go into details because obviously it's personal things, but I just think that those timelines, it kind of jumped around a lot. It didn't speak to the situation about the Blackstreet. Um, Basically, Chauncey, and there was a guy, if you look at the Bobby Liner notes, Tom Talafario, they were working with Damien. Okay, and what was happening was they there was a falling out on the business side with Damien, and they came to Teddy. That's how Tom started working on the Bobby album. We know that Chauncey was working, you know, handyman working in a studio, and he was the one that approached Teddy about putting the groups together. Teddy sent him out to different spots in New Jersey where Chauncey was from to find other singers, but they wanted him. So it's almost like a guy situation to where Timmy was envisioning Teddy being a producer, but Aaron's like, no, I don't want to be in a group unless he's in it. So Chauncey was kind of in that same situation to where he wanted Teddy to actually be in the group. So think about it as they're coming into the group. Teddy's doing the Bobby, he's doing all these other productions. So, you know, it's a lot going on when you kind of frame that. But I would say, you know, overall, certain inaccuracies that are there. When I look at the show, he talks about how he came home with $25, and his mother says, well, no, take the $25 back. You need to go ahead and get your credit. But if you look at any show record, any 12-inch record, his name is not on there. And he's talked about it in the past where he was never paid for the record. You know, so there's a lot of inconsistencies that exist within the book from a historical timeline. But I'm thinking because you're doing you're doing a memoir, you're kind of breezing over a lot of things, and you're not real. It's not chronological. And of course, when you look at the book, he's talking about things he did in the past, things he's done in the present, and things he's done in the future. So in totality, it's almost a summary of his life and his career, but it's not in a chronological pattern, A, B, C, to where, okay, what happened? Because we don't hear anything about how they started to put the groups together within GR Productions. We don't hear about how the kids at work, a little bit about the kids at work, but the relationship, the creative process in creating the Guy album, just a lot of those things, because we know that at this point right now, it may not be a documentary that may come out. I think the book is especially what it's going to be and nothing else. But, you know, I celebrate him for putting the book out, but there's just a lot of different things. So people who don't know about him, like y'all said, they're going to come away informed. Before a lot of us who bought the music, who digested the interviews, digested the content, you know, we're going to come away with slightly being disappointed because there's a lot of situational factors, behind the scenes activities that we're actually missing. And I want to just touch on the Michael Jackson piece for a second. Michael Jackson has always had his ear to the ground. So when Bad was being...
Sheldon, before you go, because I know Andrew's going to have to leave soon, but
yeah,
Andrew, what would you give if you would rate the book as a reader and a fan? I know because you said you're going to leave in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just say, for me personally, it gave me what I wanted. So for me, 10 out of 10, you know, I just wanted what Teddy wanted to say about it. And my favorite part of the book, thank you, and Sheldon, you were hitting up on it, was actually the Michael Jackson part. And I did notice that it happened at the 50% mark. And I think that the halfway point is when the hottest thing of anything, movie, whatever is happening. So that's what I liked. I was going to talk like Mike a little bit, and I'll do a little bit of I really just want to say I really appreciated how he talked about, I was willing to build him a bedroom next to the studio and hurt me. I want you to hurt me. If it doesn't hurt me, then it's not a good song. So hurt me, Teddy, hurt me. Anyway, I loved all of that. And with that, it's 4:00. Y'all are dope. I can't wait to watch the rest of this. Peace out, and love and New Jack Swing.
All right. See you next. Yeah, go ahead,
Take care.
Sheldon. You were talking about the Michael Jackson
Yeah,
part.
with the Michael Jackson thing, Michael Jackson always had his ear to the ground. So he always was tuned in to different sounds because when they were going into bad, they were looking at creating a tougher and more aggressive sound. Because if you look at the different themes, obviously, Off the Wall had a theme, Thriller had a theme, Bad had a theme. They were going into a tougher sound because at that time, Michael Jackson was meeting with Run DMC because he wanted Run DMC to be on the album. He was also recording songs that never came out with LL Cool J. So it makes sense that he has his ear to the ground with the Teddy situation. Now, obviously, with the timelines, we do know that Bad dropped in the summer of '87, and we do know that the Keith Sweat, everything else is coming out in the fall, rolling into '88. So when you look at those timelines, but we'll just say that Michael Jackson definitely had his ear to the ground. Gene used to call Teddy Magic. That was a nickname he had for him. And I mean, many years ago, Teddy talked about how Gene would not, he didn't want Quincy Jones to pull Michael Jackson into the camp because Teddy was the money guy. He was the main guy. So he really didn't do anything. He didn't go ahead and allow tell Teddy, okay, you can go ahead and work with Quincy because he didn't want to lose Teddy to Quincy. Of course, Quincy is a mentor. So now if he's schooling Teddy on the music business, now that kind of changes everything. But I will say that when you look at that, the full circle with Gene, it just shows the forgiveness in Teddy's heart in terms of that, knowing that without Gene, he couldn't have actually made that transition because going back to the whole gangster thing, Gene was a protector of Teddy. Teddy also always had the street guys. But remember, Teddy, Timmy, and Aaron, these guys are like 19, 20, 21 years old. So you got to have someone older to advocate for you in the music business. And that's who Gene was. But unfortunately, Gene was trying to control everything. But I just different things that were actually going on. But in one of my magazines I just showed you, this is circa 1993. Teddy said that, you know, his education in the music business came from being around Andre Harrell and Gene Griffin based on all the experiences that he had. And then the closing statement in the magazine is that he felt like a brand new person. He's happy to get away from Andre Harrell and Gene Griffin. So
Wow.
he had issues with them back then. And this interview was in real time. This is like a year and a half after the guy situation. But again, things happen, people change, and perspectives change, and there's always one person's side of the story, then there's another person's side of the story, and then there's the truth. All we know, we just have his perspective. But if we're looking for those individual talking points, those timelines, it's going to be hard. We're not going to get it. And think about it. Teddy's been in the game for 40 years. So how do you condense, like y'all said before, how do you condense 40 years into a memoir? Now, if you're doing a biography, that's like 350 pages. Like Teddy's book is about just shy, maybe close to 300. But if you're doing 300 pages, 350, you're going to get that. I've had biographies where the books are like 300 pages, 350 pages, but we know that, people don't read like that, man. They look at podcasts, they look at documentaries. So it's going to be highly, unlikely to go ahead and squeeze all that information there. Now, as far as ranking the book, rating the book on a scale of 1 through 5, I give the book 3.5. I give it 3.5, but again, I was glad that he wrote it. Kind of disappointed that there's certain things that were left out. And again, I'm a history guy, so I'm looking for certain type of things, but it may be totally different from someone else. But I think overall, it was more so about him summarizing his past, his present, and his future in totality. So if you're trying to do that, there are going to be a lot of things that are going to be out missing from the book. And as far as the situation with Damien, in different interviews, he's always said it that when they were looking at putting Damien in the group, he wasn't too happy about it because he didn't have a say. And he said that Gene said that it was a majority rule, and this is what we're going to go ahead and do. One of the great things that he talked about was when he compared them both, he basically acknowledged Timmy's role in the group and said, you know what, it's a whole different thing. And once Timmy left, our sound and identity changed, which Timmy shared with you, Nandi, a while ago. So I just think that, with him putting the information out. He may have had personal opinions that he finally just, unleashed about Guy, that these guys never really liked him. Aaron never liked him, you know, and of course, Damien, you see the shots that he took at Damien, like, what his role was. And then he said something about where he finally inserted his role as a dancer as if everything else. But then he also said two things is that they weren't studio singers. They weren't accustomed to being in the studio, and he had to kind of coach them. So whether that's true or not, obviously it's his perspective. And unfortunately, we're not going to get a Aaron Hall book or a Damien book or interview. So in a way, I think that this is his way in a passive aggressive mode of having the last word. Because once it's committed to paper, that's what people are going to go ahead and run with. But it's like you said, it's sad that the group broke up. And we talked about this before, Namdi. They were a pre-sound scam group, pre-pop crossover. So they missed out. That was a tragedy of them. They missed out on all the things that associated with everybody who came after them. And of course, with all the internal conflict and Gene Griffin. So, so thanks for having me on. I just wanted to kind of share that.
Sheldon, 1 minute, because you know about the interview. We've not mentioned this, and you just touched upon it there. What Timmy Gatlin said in the interview with Namdi was pretty much reaffirmed. That whole story about Guy, Teddy reaffirmed it in this book. We're not mentioned that. And again, that was a huge revelation. The fact that Teddy acknowledged he acknowledged basically what Timmy's role was in the group. Because I thought he would have said something completely different. So he acknowledged Timmy, and like he said, what he said about Damien stunned me, absolutely stunned me. Because I thought they actually got on well, them two. They probably do, but I was still stunned. So Teddy, Timmy getting his props really and his respect was a big thing in this book for what Teddy said. So yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
think about that. He said, "Thank you, you're welcome." He said that Damien basically was the quarterback.
Yeah.
Damien was really the leader Timmy was really the leader of the group. If you look at it, Timmy was he conceptualized everything. He was the primary writer and lyricist. He was really the visionary of the group, But in the end, like I said, Damien comes in. There's a visual aspect of it. Obviously, when we listen to Guy 3, we hear him singing. He does an excellent job vocally. It's just the fact that when you look at the group dynamics within the group, it's going to go up and down. And then when you add money, you add the dynamic in terms of, okay, they didn't grow up together, but they had a bond. But all those things come into play because, if you were friends years ago prior to that, the energy is totally different, man. But, that's the music business for you. And again, not taking sides, but just kind of frame it, in totality from a critical perspective, because everyone's going to have their stories. And we know that Aaron had a lot of issues, personal issues. He lost his mom. He was young. He went through a whole lot of different things. He wrote My Prerogative and didn't get the money, and a lot of collaborations, things that he lost, man. So, of course, there's so many different things, but it's good that you guys went ahead and did it to provide a summary. But I advise anybody who doesn't have the book, go ahead and purchase the book, because that's going to give you some insight on this man's history. Because at a certain point, the book could go out of print, or the price could go up on the book, to make it unavailable for people to purchase. But but you all great perspectives all the way around. Basically, different perspectives, all in totality, that gives the listeners and the viewers or whatever what this book is about, from a great producer. But again, past, present, and future. So if you notice, we want to hear about the today and the GR Productions, but he's framing himself in a contemporary setting. He's not locked into the 80s or the 90s. Those are high points, but this is also what I'm doing now.
Well,
And, sorry, Sheldon. Firstly, it's lovely to meet you in person. So
Nice to meet you, sir. Nice to meet you, sir.
And, yeah, I've seen a lot of your previous podcasts with these two chaps here, and I've just seen you get lots of red cards. So those red cards are a thing of the past. And I know you're a busy man. And I know you're not on the podcast anymore, but if you have the capacity sometimes, I think it would be amazing to have you join as well sometimes. And I think it would be a really well-rounded show. I think so. It'd be good to see you sometimes, man.
Thank you. And
Definitely. We
I
miss you.
appreciate all your work. Thanks for Steve and Nambi for bringing me on. So in totality, we just have a mutual respect and admiration for that genre of music, man. The music prior to that was slanting older, and we're coming of age, 10, 12, 15, 18 years old, whatever our age was at the time, man. And that's the music that we grew up with, and it resonates with us to this day.
Absolutely. But your perspective was fantastic. It was a really good, really great overview. I mean, you really thought about things, and I think only a reader can come out with and present it in the way in which you have. But I think, as you said, it's difficult. When as fans we want more. We want to know everything. We want all of the information. But as Stevie said, as you're saying, I think he's just tried to. It's just for the masses. This is not necessarily for all of us. This is for everybody. Like, the random people that just see the book, as Stevie said. And that's fair enough. This is not the book I was expecting in many ways. And I think for me, 3.5 would be a bit harsh. I might give it a 6.
No, that's out of 5.
Oh, 3.5 out of 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think.
But if I'm doing 10, I'm gonna give it 6 or 7. But if I'm doing 5, 3.5 out of 5. Yeah.
And I think that's about fair, because I think there's lots of things that we learned in this book that we would not have got previously. We didn't know about previously. So I'm excited about those bits. Not so much, but I am disappointed because I'm a fan, as all of us are, and the things that he left out. But we're always going to be like that. We're human beings. We always want more.
My favorite things, of course, was his childhood and how he was really supported musically by his village, by his circle in Harlem or whatever, and they really lifted him up. And the thing that really stood out, because in different interviews, like he did on one podcast, he used to talk about people would extort him. He was later in his career, people would come and they would try to extort him. So, that story when they were in the Flash Inn up in Harlem, and he's got everybody doing the sit down, and his Uncle Willie's there advocating for him. That was really, really good. And then I think you said something about he lost Gene Griffin and the Golden Goose, and as far as the money, Gene Griffin had issues because his reputation was soiled after the Guy situation, because people are like, okay, if Teddy's your son and you do this to his son, imagine what you're going to do to everybody else. So when he did the Basic Black thing, I think a second album would have been really dope to really flesh out their identity. But again, it was a great album, but you see what happened. And then he had another window to where he moved from Basic Black to about a decade. He started jumping into Southern hip hop. But I think that this guy, he's not necessarily a music guy hands-on. He's almost like a talent scout, so to speak. Like when you look at the Backstreet Boys and they're discovering them in that capacity, and NSYNC, that's what his role is, either to discover or refine, in a sense, talent, but he's the mouthpiece. He's the main entity within that, so that's basically his legacy. But Teddy said, hey, in a book, if Gene was not there, there were certain things they weren't going to be able to do. And he didn't see himself, as an R&B producer. He was content doing hip hop. So if Teddy never worked with Keith Sweat, Teddy just would have been known as just a regional hip hop producer like everybody else in the mid 80s. He wouldn't have made that jump into R&B. So I just think that, it happened the way it happened, and it happened so fast. It happened when he was young. So to really take stock, at almost 60 years old, based on his age, it's a lot. It's a blur. You're moving fast. So for us, it's a lot of things that we look forward to seeing, but in totality, I'm glad that he put the book out. And with anybody who has that long span of a career, it's easy for things to be left on a cutting room floor. Even if it was a documentary or a movie, if we saw that, we still be wanting more.
Yeah, Marco, you're saying that we want a 600-page book. Actually, what we want is a 5-volume encyclopedia. That's what we want. That's what we actually want. 600 pages. What are you talking about? It's not enough, mate.
As I said, I mean, for me, as I said, because and I'll give my rating. I do definitely would encourage anyone who's not bought the book to buy the book and to be able to learn about the history. If you're an invested fan to the level that we are, and you've got the newspaper clippings or the interviews, and you're searching for interviews he's done with Ed Lover, or he's done on the Breakfast Club, or he did one on the BBC a while back. So you would have heard a lot of these stories in depth, and so you pretty much know the general gist. And of course, you're always wanting to hear stuff that you've never heard before, and some of the work that he did behind the scenes, which we're getting when you interview people like Sprague or Mucho or John Marie Harvard. When you're hearing the people who are there in the studio talking about, yeah, Teddy just, Darkchild talks about Teddy just says, okay, I want you to, here's the beat on the keyboard, and he says, okay, play that and go produce, do things for Men of Vision. So then he's telling him how Teddy gave him the loop and everything, and pretty much says, okay, just finish it off. So hearing Teddy just let us know what it's like to make a record, and going through that process makes it understand that it might seem easy to him, but how did you do it? What came first, and stuff. So I think that would have been interesting. But as I said, it's who he's working with to do the ghostwriter. How much do you remember? And who's the marketing for the book? And maybe we'll get it in another volume. Maybe we'll get it in a different, depending on how successful this book is. Is there any way of finding out how successful this book is? I mean, those numbers come up? The publishers, are they happy about it?
They don't necessarily come up what it is. In a lot of memoirs, they don't really do very well, to be honest with you. A lot of music memoirs, especially from a lot of R&B and hip hop artists or whatever that is, they don't do huge numbers. But the number one thing is when the book comes out, if it can get on the bestseller list. That's all that really counts. But of course, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that leads up to that, because a book that goes on the book bestseller list, all you have to do is sell 5,000 copies right off the bat, to land on the bestseller list. So it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to sell a whole bunch of million copies or whatever, like you're trying to go platinum or something like that. If you get on the bestseller list, then that's good for him, because he can, I'm a bestseller, New York City Times, New York Times best-selling artist. So I mean, best-selling writer. So in the end, the book, we'll never know what the numbers are going to be, but the thing is, if he can get on the New York Times bestseller list, that's good for him. I don't see another book coming out, because he basically captured past, present, and future. I think at best, people who are interviewing him, and unfortunately, I've seen a lot of the podcasts, and I haven't been too happy with all of them, because people are talking to him, they're interviewing him from a fan perspective. They're not being critical. They're not asking a lot of targeted questions, but they're things that they don't know. I mean, you hear them, oh yeah, you're a legend, and Michael Jackson, and and it's very unfortunate, man, because some of these guys, no disrespect, they don't need to have a platform. They don't need to have a microphone, because you get these people on your podcast only for a short period of time. You got to do the research, but nobody's doing the research. It's very passive. So they're not pulling information out the way you all do, and in that way, if he says something and you can be like, oh, well, I remember you said this during this particular time, and but everybody's, it's one-sided. I'll just say that it's passive interviewing. Let's just say that, but I don't think another book is going to come out. But I just, at this point, it would be great if he comes on. And then my message to Teddy or whoever they gave me the email, I requested that they come on here. You know, he's done all the other platforms to come on halftime chat
Exactly.
because,
Exactly.
you guys were the, everybody else, they're jumping on what's hot, but you guys have, from the forefront, it's built around his legacy. So, personally speaking, I really have an issue that he has not been on here yet,
I totally
but
agree with you.
unfortunately it is what it is. But once again, I think you all did a good job, and I hope he sees this and recognizes that you're not doing this for the fame, for the notoriety. You're doing it for the love. It's not current events, it's not hot topics. You all are doing your research. You've been committed to this man for decades, so it will only be right for him to go ahead and come on. But who knows if that's going to happen?
But the irony there is, I must have posted about this this podcast this week, and Teddy reposted that the about the podcast, and then I said you should come on this podcast, just join us for a little bit, and he reposted that as well. So I'm just saying, like, it's not that he doesn't know. Andrew's reached out. I know. I'm sure we all have, like, just said, come on, come and join. But I hope he does. I hope he does at some point. But shame he didn't today.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as I said, it's I have to. Yeah, I'm sure he's busy because you see him on different podcasts, so he is, and most of them he's sitting down with them. So there's a lot of travel and stuff. But it's good to get your perspective on the book, Sheldon, and I guess
Yeah,
it's
one more thing that while Sheldon's here, how relevant and to add to what Sheldon was saying there, how relevant is this podcast and this book drops? Like I say, for the last few years, we've been talking about it non-stop for the last few years, and he goes and drops a book, which keeps this podcast so relevant, I think. So big ourselves up as well. Big ourselves up.
But you know what though? I'll say this to piggyback on what you said, Steve, is that 6 months from now, after the book is, I'm gonna say run its course, because books never run their course because people always discover material. But once the recency kind of dies down with this book, halftime chat will still be in the game,
Exactly.
exploring this where everyone else has moved on to something else.
Definitely, definitely. And just with that, just before we close up, it's surprising that New Edition. I did think you. I did. We talked about not mentioning Brandon Mitchell in the book, but New Edition, who were briefly mentioned, are top of the leaderboard in the fan vote for the Rock and
Wow.
Roll Hall of Fame. They have overtaken Phil Collins by about 20,000 votes. And it looks like a show in that they will be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And when you think about the legacy of New Edition, from the groups to put them together, then the groups, this would definitely be a well-deserved honor that New Edition make it through. They didn't make the money that New Kids in the Blocks and Backstreet Boys and NSYNC have made, but they have definitely deserved to be recognized in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So people keep voting every day just to solidify that, but they've all put out a united campaign, and they're touring at the right time to make themselves relevant. So to overtake Phil Collins is not a mean feat, and to overtake Pink, Sade, Wu-Tang Clan, Oasis, which I'm super shocked that they overtook Oasis, and stuff like that, shows that they really are generally black royalty as well. Yes. Okay, so wrapping it up, Stevie, for your final words, and I'll get to VJ then and Sheldon before we close it.
Like I say, I'm over the moon. We've finally got this book. And I just, like I said, I took it from the perspective of he's trying to appeal to the masses. And, you know, if you pick that, you're in a library one day and you don't know who this person is, but it looks interesting, I'll give it a read. So I'll give it 10 out of 10 for me all day. I'm so over the moon we finally got this book. And Teddy, please, come on, man. Come on, halftime chat. Long overdue, mate. Come on, halftime chat. Thank you, please. Great to see you, Sheldon.
Good seeing you too, my man.
VJ, what about you? What any your final?
I think I'm very excited that the book came out. I'm very happy that there is a Teddy Riley book. I've really enjoyed reading it. I've learned lots.
Mhm.
I've loved these conversations. I've loved all these interviews that we're getting as a byproduct of that. And I'm really enjoying this time as somebody who has followed Teddy Riley's music for a very, very long time, since the 80s. So it's great that the book came out. And as I said earlier, I think I give it about a 6 or a 7. I think that's about the right mark, only because I'm a fan and I want more. And as fans, we always want more. But Teddy, you knocked it out of the park. So thank you for making it. And yeah, when's volume 2 coming out?
Okay. And for me, I would say that one of the things the book has done has given us an opportunity to hear from Teddy, not just on paper, but he's now how to go out and promote the book. And we're getting different stories based on that. He seems to be also reinventing himself, his image, and his narrative. I would say that as somebody who has been a vivid fan following his every step, um, there was probably a few things that I learned in there, but I think I would say this. My first experience to Disneyland was going to in Orlando, and I didn't realize that was the biggest one. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I went to Anaheim, and I remember going with somebody and saying, "Okay, we go here. We're going to see this. We're going to see this," and they didn't have it because Anaheim is smaller, so they didn't have all the things you had in Orlando. So it was quite disappointing. And then when I went to the one in Paris, they didn't have a lot of the other stuff. So I expected more because I know so much more, and so that was damping. And I think, as you've all alluded to, if I didn't know too much about Teddy, maybe I just knew him of doing the Michael Jackson stuff and the Blackstreet stuff, I would be like, oh wow, I didn't realize he did this. But I think for those of us who are historians, not to your level, Sheldon, but people who've followed him from day one, we probably would think, oh, we could have we wanted something else and some more and stuff. So I think for two or three different levels of fans, this book would definitely have its place. And I appreciate the fact that he's working hard promoting it and getting things out there, and we're getting stories from it as well.
Mhm.
So
It-
mhm.
So for me, this book was supposed to come out in October. I pre-ordered it, and I was waiting for it to come out in October, and it obviously came out in February. So I've read the book twice already, and again, I'm glad that he wrote it. The things that resonated with me, obviously, were his childhood, and then different flashes in the career, and of course, in the end, where it comes full circle, where um, he and Gene, they kind of come full circle and they kind of patch things up, so to speak. But I'm glad that he wrote the book.
Mhm.
I really am glad that he wrote it, because if something were to happen to him, that meant this whole history would have actually died
Mhm.
with him, because it still just would have been outside perspectives and things of that nature. So I think it was a perfect time for him to write the book. He's in a sweet spot.
Mhm.
People know him, like you all said, through verses. People discovered him, rediscovered him. So he's right in the pocket with this book, because it's capturing the attention of everyone of all ages. People who are younger than us, maybe people who are older than us. Had he put this book out 5 or 10 years later, I don't know if it would have gotten the traction that it would have needed. it would have just maybe flew under the cracks because now people have a tendency to kind of age out. But he talked about on one of the other platforms to start as far as being relevant, visually, physically, in terms of being right in the pocket. And I think that's what he wants to do. You want to be contemporary, but good job. Good job on the book. There are things I might have wanted to see, but I know that when you're doing a memoir, it's not going to be by the number, so to speak.
Mm.
So, and he put a book out. I'm the book project I'm working on. I'll leave it at this. It's hard. I let somebody read the book to edit it, and they tell me you got to take this stuff out, man. You sound like James Baldwin. You got too much stuff in the book. So I understand how the challenge could be trying to fit 40 years into 15 to 20 chapters. So that's where I'm at.
Wow.
Well, and we can all say that we're glad that Teddy is still active and still relevant, and the fact that he is still making himself known out there. And as I said, we all seem to we'll all agree to recommend a book for everyone to pick up and to read and keep a copy as well. I had mine on the audiobook, and I've listened to it. A copy from the States is still on its way, so it'll be great to be able to read that as well. Okay, so we appreciate everyone. Sheldon, it's been where he gets the red cards, VJs. When we did the, I remember we did a BBD, and we were ranking Motown Philly. No, sorry, Motown Philly, the Poison album, and Sheldon was normally used to putting like Poison at number 4, and then or Motown Feeling at number 6. He the most obvious number 1, he would just put it down at number 3 or 4 and stuff, and it was almost like we could never have a full house because Sheldon had.
Hey, I'm guilty as charged, man. Guilty as charged.
so, so those were the days, yes.
What
But
did you give it out of 10?
Oh, me?
We didn't get your mark, did we?
Oh, you didn't get my mark. Yes, a 7, a 7, a 7, a 7. I yes, definitely give it a 7, and yes, that means that for me high standards because super fans. Super fans. I wanted to hear more about Future Studios. I wanted to go into what I don't need to know about Pharrell. Chad, what was Chad like? Everyone talks about Chad will come into the studio with a trumpet tomorrow and come up with a banjo and create mad sound. Let's hear more about how do you. I didn't realize Timberland was there. So he skits over some of the things that I would want to listen, but he's like, let's get some of the bigger names, and that was the difference for me. Stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, nuance and context. I think that's basically what the book was missing in certain respects, the nuance and the context or whatever. So again, there could have been a lot more in there. But the thing about it is, we read the book. Think about it. Everybody who he went to, who he interviewed, they did not read the book. They didn't go out and go buy the book.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
that's the thing, man. That's the thing. That's the thing I don't understand because I've got Teddy's number. I've called him. I've left messages. I'm just saying, man. I've reached out. I've tried to get him on this podcast, and I just don't understand it, man. Because these are people that really care about you, like, and your legacy and what you've done. Those other people, they don't know shit about you, man. They don't. They're not on our level, do they? I'm just saying, man.
Nah.
Yeah.
It's more about the numbers and the views to get the book sold, but they're not reading the book. They didn't read it,
Yeah.
So
it's well, yeah. I'll go. So in due time. So, guys, it's been a blast. Thanks for everyone, and I'm glad at least the comments were up, so everyone could see that every time you comment, we are watching and we engage with that. But today, you can see it was alongside the video, so you were definitely part of that. For the those who are going to be watching later, please in the comments, can you give your rating out of a 7? Out of a 10? How you rate the book, those who've read it, and and hopefully it's not out of the it's not inconceivable that Teddy does finally make his way on
And just so there's no misunderstanding, mine was 3.5 out of 5, not 3.5 out of 10, 3.5 out of 5. If it's gonna be out of 10, then 6.5, maybe 7. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
For all the people in the back. I don't want the permanent red card.
Thanks for clarifying that. I was worried there for a second, man. I was like, what?
Yeah, it does happen. It does happen. Okay, Mac, everyone that's tuned in. Thanks to Dan. Good, missed some of the details. Yeah, just it's going to be replayed, so you get to watch it. So we'll catch you guys later, and as always, we appreciate it. Take care.
Be well, everybody.
Take care.
Good night, guys.
Thanks for joining.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of Halftime Chat. Please remember to subscribe, share, and comment. But most importantly, why don't you become a member of Halftime Chat? We've got amazing videos, amazing perks, and being able to support the channel. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.
I never participated in that category.
And somewhere in between us, or even loving us, on which I did miss you.
What was it like growing up?
She's still making an impact on 4 houses down.
I have a couple pieces.
I didn't get this one and that one.
That works for you, but just for me,
No, okay.
They don't understand what Jonas' voice meant.
play it.